Laura told me she was picking up extra shifts because our daughter needed braces, and the mortgage had gone up after escrow recalculated. That was the part that made me feel stupid later, because it sounded exactly like marriage. It sounded like two tired people doing what they had to do for the house, for the kid, for the future we kept telling ourselves we were still building. We had been married 14 years by then. I taught history at a public high school outside Columbus, and Laura worked nights in the ER 3 towns over. Our life was not exciting, but it was steady in the way I used to think mattered most. We had a 13-year-old daughter named Emily, a dog that shed all over the stairs, a freezer full of Costco chicken, and a whiteboard calendar on the side of the fridge that ran our lives better than either of us did. Hospital work had always made Laura's schedule weird, so I never expected normal. She missed birthday dinners, slept through Saturday afternoons, and came home smelling like sanitizer and cafeteria coffee. There were nights she would walk in at 7 in the morning, drop her shoes by the mudroom, and sit on the bottom step for a minute before she even spoke. I never liked seeing her that worn down, but I respected it. I really did. So, when she said the ER was short again, and she could grab extra overnight shifts for a few months, I believed her. Emily's orthodontist had just shown us the payment plan, and I remember Laura tapping the paper with her finger and saying, "We can handle this if we don't get careless." That was how she talked when she was anxious. Practical. Focused. Like if she organized the problem hard enough, the fear underneath it would stay hidden. At first, nothing about it felt strange. She had always been the one who knew which bills hit on which dates, which insurance plan covered what, and when the car tags were due. I handled the yard, groceries, school pickups, and most weeknight dinners when she worked. It was not perfectly balanced, but it was ours. When she told me she could work Tuesdays and some Thursdays for extra money, I said okay because I thought that was what a decent husband did. The first thing I noticed was not enough to accuse anybody of anything. It was just that she came home from those extra shifts different. Not rested exactly, but not wrecked either. Real ER nights left her with this flat look, like her mind was still back in a room with monitors beeping. On the extra shift mornings, she was tired, but more guarded than drained. She would come in quietly, put her phone face down on the counter, and head upstairs before Emily came down for school. I told myself I was being unfair. People have different nights at work. Not every shift is a disaster. Sometimes I caught myself watching her pour coffee and felt ashamed, like I had already made her guilty in my head just because she did not look exhausted enough for me. That is a strange place to be in a marriage, measuring your wife's honesty by how tired she seems at the kitchen sink. There were little things after that. She stopped leaving her badge on the bowl by the garage door, even though she had done that for years. She started washing her scrubs as soon as she got home instead of throwing them into the hamper. She changed the passcode on her phone and said the hospital had updated some security policy, which sounded reasonable because hospitals are always updating something. I accepted it because I wanted to accept it. One Thursday morning, I asked how the night had been while I was packing Emily's lunch. Laura stood by the fridge with her coffee, still in her jacket, and said, "Long. We had 2 ambulances back to back around 3. She said it smoothly, not like she was performing. I remember nodding and asking if she wanted eggs before she slept, and she said no, she just wanted a shower. That should have been the end of the conversation, but she had missed one small thing. The night before, a snowstorm had pushed through our area, and the local news had mentioned several ERs were diverting ambulances because of road closures and staffing issues. I had checked the hospital's public page before bed because I worried about her driving home. Her hospital had been on diversion from midnight until almost 5. I did not say that. I just stood there with a butter knife in my hand, spreading peanut butter on bread, while my wife told me about ambulances that probably had not come to her ER. Maybe she meant patients brought in by family. Maybe she mixed up the time. Maybe I was looking for cracks because I was tired too. I gave myself every excuse for her before I gave myself permission to feel uncomfortable. That morning, after Emily left for school and Laura went upstairs, I sat in the driveway longer than I needed to. My car was running, the defroster was blowing, and I had my phone in my hand with a text open to her. I typed, "Were you really at work last night?" Then I deleted it because I could already hear how it would sound. Jealous, paranoid, ungrateful. Like the husband of a nurse who did not understand what her job took out of her. So I went to school and taught second period like my chest did not feel tight. I talked about Reconstruction while half the class stared at their Chromebooks. And I remember thinking how strange it is that your life can start tilting and nobody around you sees it. By lunch, I had talked myself back into being normal. By dinner, Laura was laughing with Emily about a video on her phone, and for a while I let myself believe I had imagined the whole thing. That was the part I hate admitting. I did not want to catch her. I wanted the uneasy feeling to go away. I wanted my wife to be tired from work, our money to be tight for normal reasons, and our marriage to be the same ordinary thing I thought it was when I woke up that week. For the next couple of weeks, I tried to treat the whole thing like stress. That was the easiest explanation, and honestly, the kindest one. Laura was working too much. I was grading papers until midnight. Emily was at that age where every normal conversation could turn into a slammed bedroom door, and the house always seemed to need another $100 we did not have planned. Laura leaned into the money part hard. She started talking about the braces like they were a shared enemy. She would leave little notes on the counter saying things like, "Paid ortho, don't forget electric Friday." She clipped coupons again, which she had not done in years, and once she made a big show of putting back a sweater at Target because, as she said, "Extra shifts don't mean we get stupid." I remember feeling guilty for even doubting her when she was standing there acting like the responsible adult in the room. But the off feeling kept coming back in small, stupid ways. One morning after a supposed overnight shift, she came home with her hair still neat. Not perfect, but not the way it looked after 12 hours in the ER. Her ponytail usually came home half fallen, with little pieces stuck to her forehead. That morning, it looked like she had redone it recently. When I noticed, I hated myself for noticing. Another time, she said she had grabbed food from the vending machine because the cafeteria was closed. Later that day, I found a takeout container in the outside trash with a receipt from a nicer place near Grandview, not anywhere close to the hospital. I stood there by the bins holding that receipt like an idiot, trying to make it fit into a harmless shape. Maybe a coworker brought it. Maybe she picked it up after work. Maybe the receipt blew in from the neighbor's trash, which was the kind of explanation you only entertain when you are trying very hard not to know something. I did not keep the receipt. I folded it once, then unfolded it, then dropped it back into the trash and closed the lid. That sounds weak when I say it now, but at the time, keeping it felt like crossing a line. There is a moment in suspicion where you know that if you start collecting things, you are not just worried anymore. You are investigating your own marriage. And I was not ready to be that man. Laura must have sensed I was watching more closely because she got warmer for a while. Not affectionate exactly, but attentive. She asked about my classes, made chili on a Sunday, and sat beside me on the couch with her feet tucked under my leg like she used to. She complained about one of the charge nurses and told me a story about a drunk patient trying to steal a wheelchair. It sounded normal enough that I felt almost relieved. Then, that same week, she told me she had picked up another Thursday night. I was rinsing plates at the sink when she said it, and the way she said it made me look over. Too casual, like she had practiced making it sound casual. She said, "It's just 8 hours, not 12. I'll be home before Emily leaves." I asked, "Is the overtime really helping?" She looked at me for half a second too long. "Of course it is." I nodded and turned back to the dishes. My hands were in hot water, and I remember feeling my wedding ring loose on my finger because of the soap. I wanted to ask where the money was showing up, but I did not. I told myself I would check the budget that weekend, the same way any husband might check when the bills were tight. That Thursday, she left at 9:15 p.m. She kissed Emily on the top of the head, told her not to stay up watching makeup videos, and told me not to wait up. Her car backed out of the driveway with the same little squeak in the brakes I had been meaning to fix. I stood by the front window until her taillights turned the corner, and I felt ridiculous. If she had forgotten something and come back, I would have looked like a man spying on his own wife from behind the blinds. I slept badly. Around 2 a.m, I woke up and checked my phone, not because I expected anything, but because I had started doing that on the nights she claimed to work. There was no message from her. That was not unusual. The ER was busy, and she was not someone who texted much during shifts. Still, I opened the weather app, then the news, then closed both because I knew I was just giving my hands something to do. She came home at 6:40. That was earlier than usual for any shift, even an 8-hour one, because the hospital was far enough that traffic mattered. She came through the garage door quietly, took off her shoes, and smiled when she saw me already dressed for work. She said, "You're up early." I said, "Couldn't sleep." She leaned against the counter and rubbed the back of her neck. "Same. Long night." I almost asked what happened. I almost asked what unit she was on, who she worked with, whether the cafeteria had been open, anything specific enough that she would have to choose a lie and stand on it. Instead, Emily came downstairs in pajama pants and asked where her hoodie was, and the morning moved around us like nothing was wrong. The detail that made it harder to ignore came that afternoon. I was at school during my planning period when I got an email from the hospital benefits office. It was not personal. It was one of those open enrollment reminders spouses get when both names are on the insurance. The email said pay statements were now available for review before plan selection, and there was a link to the employee portal Laura and I had used together the year before. I did not click it right away. I sat at my desk looking at that email while the hallway outside filled with students changing classes. My first thought was not that I would find proof. My first thought was that if the overtime was real, I could stop feeling crazy. I could open the statements, see the extra hours, and be ashamed of myself in private. So I waited until I got home. Laura was sleeping before her next shift, or what she said was her next shift. Emily was at volleyball practice. The kitchen was quiet except for the dishwasher running. I opened the laptop we kept on the desk by the pantry, clicked the email, and told myself I was just checking insurance numbers. The link opened because the browser still remembered the login from the last time we had compared medical plans together. I stared at the screen for a second before I clicked anything else. It felt wrong, but not in the clean way people talk about right and wrong when nothing is at stake. This was our insurance, our paycheck deductions, our daughter's orthodontic coverage, and the reason Laura kept telling me she was barely sleeping. I went first to the benefits page because that was what the email was actually about. The numbers were boring at first. Premiums, deductibles, dental coverage, the kind of stuff that makes you feel old just reading it. Then I saw a tab marked Pay History, and I sat there with my hand on the mouse longer than I want to admit. I clicked it. The first statement looked normal: regular hours, night differential, taxes, retirement, insurance. I opened the next one. then the next. I was not good at reading payroll, so at first I thought maybe I was missing something. I kept looking for overtime lines, extra shift codes, anything that explained the Tuesdays and Thursdays she had been disappearing from our house. There was nothing close to what she had been describing. One check had a little extra on it, but not enough to cover even one full overnight shift. Another had no overtime at all. I pulled up the calendar on my phone and started matching dates. Laura had told me she worked 6 extra shifts over that period. The pay history showed maybe a few hours of something, but not the kind of money she kept pointing to whenever she said we had to stay disciplined. I did not feel smart in that moment. I felt hot and embarrassed, like I had walked into a room and found everyone already knew the joke was on me. I closed the laptop, then opened it again because closing it did not change anything. I took a picture of the screen with my phone, then immediately felt sick about it, like the picture made the marriage worse than the numbers did. Laura came downstairs about 20 minutes later, hair damp from a shower, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. I had the laptop back on the benefits page by then, not the pay history. She opened the fridge and asked if Emily had eaten before practice. Her voice was normal. That bothered me more than if she had sounded nervous. I said, "Yeah, she had pasta." Laura nodded. "Good. I'm going to try to sleep a little more before tonight." I wanted to ask her about the paychecks right there. The words were in my mouth. But she looked tired enough to pass for innocent, and I hated that my brain was still trying to give her that. So I only said, "You're working tonight too?" She did not look at me when she answered. "Just till 6. That was the second time she gave me an end time instead of a shift. I'd never paid attention to that before. Nurses talk about 12s, 8s, doubles, units. Laura had started talking like someone describing an absence from home, not a schedule at work. After she went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table and opened our banking app. I did not go digging through anything private. It was the same joint account we both used for bills, groceries, gas, and Emily's expenses. I searched the last 2 months by the dates Laura said she had worked extra. At first, there was not much. Gas stations, coffee, pharmacy, all normal things. Then I noticed the locations. On 3 supposed work nights, she had bought gas from a station on Henderson Road, which was not on the route to her hospital. It was closer to a cluster of private medical offices across town. On one of those nights, there was also a restaurant charge at 10:48 p.m., $31 and some change, at a place I knew because I had taken Emily there once after a dentist appointment. I tried to make that innocent too. Maybe she met a coworker before the shift. Maybe the hospital floated her somewhere else. Maybe she stopped on the way because she needed air, food, anything. But the payroll did not have the hours. The payroll was the part that made every nice explanation thinner. I did not sleep much that night. Laura left at 9 again, kissed me on the cheek like we were fine, and told me not to forget trash day. I stood in the kitchen after she left and listened to the garage door close. My hands were shaking a little, which made me angry because there was nobody there to see it, nobody making me perform calm except me. The next morning, she came home with coffee that was not from the hospital cafeteria. It was from a small place near the same medical office park. I saw the logo on the cup when she set it by the sink. She saw me see it and said, "One of the girls brought those in." I nodded too fast. "Nice." She gave me a look then, not guilty exactly, but checking, like she was measuring how much work the lie still needed. Then she smiled and asked if I could pick up Emily from school because she was exhausted. That afternoon, I went back to the laptop. I was looking for the benefits page again, but one of Laura's browser tabs restored when I opened it. It was the hospital's scheduling system, not the full internal thing with patient information, just the staff calendar page she used at home to check posted shifts. Her name was on the left side with color-coded blocks beside it. I did not touch anything for a minute. I just looked. The Thursday she had worked until 6 was blank. So was the Tuesday before it. I took pictures because I did not trust myself to remember it correctly later. Then I opened the calendar on the fridge and compared the shifts she had written in dry erase marker, neat little L 9 to 6 notes across the month, to the hospital schedule still sitting on the screen. The first mismatch hurt. The second one made me cold. By the 5th, I stopped pretending I was checking because I hoped she was telling the truth. I did not confront Laura after I found the schedule mismatches. I wish I could say that was because I had some clean plan, but mostly I was scared of hearing whatever she would say next. If she lied well enough, I might start doubting the paper in front of me. If she admitted something, then I had to live in a house where the thing I feared had a name. So I went quiet. Not silent in a dramatic way. I still made dinner, still asked Emily about school, still told Laura the dishwasher was making that grinding noise again. But I stopped offering pieces of myself for her to use. I stopped saying I missed her on the extra shift nights. I stopped apologizing when money came up. I started listening more than I talked, and I noticed how often Laura filled the space with explanations I had not asked for. One Sunday, she sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out in front of her and said, "We're still going to have to be careful. My extra hours are helping, but not enough to get lazy." I was making coffee, and I had to turn away from her because my face felt too honest. The pay statements were in a folder in my desk drawer by then. So were screenshots of the posted schedule and downloaded bank statements from the joint account. I had printed them at school after everyone left, standing by the copier like I was doing something wrong. I said, "How many extra shifts did you pick up this month?" She glanced down at the bills. "I'd have to check. 4, maybe 5. "Must be wearing you out." "It is," she said. "But that's what moms do, right?" That one landed in a place I did not expect. Not because she called herself a good mother. Laura was a good mother in a lot of ordinary ways. And that made it worse. She knew Emily's teachers, remembered her friend drama, drove her to volleyball, sat beside her during orthodontist visits, and squeezed her hand when the spacers hurt. But she was using that same mother voice to cover something else, and she was asking me to admire it. I almost said it then. I almost walked to the desk, pulled out the folder, and put it down between us. Instead, I took my coffee into the laundry room and stood there with the dryer humming in front of me until I could breathe normally again. The next day after school, I called my sister Connie from the parking lot. Connie is not soft, but she is steady. She had gone through a divorce 5 years earlier, and she had once told me the worst mistake she made was arguing before she understood her own paperwork. I did not tell her everything at first. I only said, if somebody thinks their spouse is lying about money and work, what should they do before they say anything? She was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, "Don't ask a question you're not ready to hear lied back to you." I sat there in my car, watching students cut across the teacher lot, even though they were not supposed to. I told her about the payroll, the schedule, the gas stations, the restaurant charges. I could hear her washing dishes on the other end. Then the water shut off. "Brent," she said, "you need to talk to an attorney before you talk to Laura." That felt too big. Attorney was a word for other people's lives. People with screaming fights, secret apartments, custody battles, houses for sale. I told Connie I was not there yet, and she said, "You don't have to be there emotionally. You just have to know where there is." 2 days later, I met with a divorce attorney named Rachel Orr during my planning period, and the lunch block I pretended was a dentist appointment. Her office was in a brick building near a bank, Plain carpet, quiet receptionist, coffee and paper cups. I handed her my folder like a student turning in late work. She looked through it and did not react much, which somehow made me feel less crazy. Rachel told me the records did not prove every piece of the affair, but they proved enough to show a pattern of deception around time and household money. She told me not to empty accounts, not to lock Laura out of anything, not to make threats, and not to confront her in a way that could turn into a scene. She said if I decided to file, I should be boring, organized, and careful. Boring sounded impossible. Careful sounded like swallowing glass. After that meeting, I opened a separate checking account and changed my direct deposit for future paychecks. I did not drain the joint account. I did not cancel cards. I just stopped being financially blind. I made copies of the mortgage papers, insurance documents, orthodontic payment plan, tax returns, and every statement I could access as a spouse and account holder. Laura kept acting like we were partners under pressure. That was the part that kept pushing me closer to saying something. She would touch my shoulder when she passed behind me at the sink. She would text, "Love you, long night ahead," before one of her blank schedule shifts. She would come home and complain about being unappreciated at work while I stood there, knowing work might not have seen her at all. The name Nathan Reeves came from a charge I had almost ignored. It was not a hotel, not jewelry, nothing dramatic. It was a payment at a coffee shop inside a medical office building, and the bank listed the location name in more detail than usual. When I searched the building directory, one office came up again and again beside the addresses tied to her gas and food charges. Reeves Orthopedic and Sports Medicine. Dr. Nathan Reeves was listed as the owner. I did not know him. I had never shaken his hand. His picture on the clinic website showed a clean-cut man in a blue dress shirt with a wedding ring visible on the hand folded over his other wrist. I stared at that picture for a long time, not because it proved anything by itself, but because it gave shape to the places Laura had been choosing over our house. The confrontation became unavoidable when Laura told me the hospital had asked her to cover Saturday night, too. Emily had a volleyball tournament that morning, and Laura said she would come for the first game, sleep in the afternoon, then work overnight. She said it while signing a school form at the counter, like this was just another sacrifice. I had checked the schedule 10 minutes earlier. Her Saturday was blank. I did not say anything when Laura told me about Saturday. I kept my eyes on the permission form she was signing for Emily's tournament, and I watched her write our last name like she still owned the shape of it. She slid the paper toward me and said, "Can you scan this at school tomorrow? I don't want Em to miss the deadline." I said, "Yeah, I can do that." She looked up, probably because my voice came out too flat. "You okay?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to ask her how many times she had kissed me goodbye on her way to somewhere that was not the hospital. I wanted to ask if Nathan Reeves knew our daughter's braces were the excuse, if he had ever laughed about it, if he knew I was packing lunches and doing trash day while Laura played exhausted in our kitchen. Instead, I said, "Just tired." That was the closest I came to giving myself away. Saturday morning, we sat on metal bleachers at Emily's volleyball tournament like any other parents. Laura wore jeans and a gray sweatshirt from the hospital 5K fundraiser, which felt like a joke only I could hear. She cheered at the right times, took pictures, and hugged Emily after the first game. Emily kept asking if Laura could stay for the whole thing, and Laura smiled sadly and said, "I wish I could, honey. Mom's got to sleep before work." I watched Emily accept that answer, because kids in houses like ours learn early not to argue with work. That made me angrier than the bank records. Laura was not just lying to me. She was training our daughter to respect the lie. After the second game, Laura kissed Emily's forehead and told her she was proud. Then she touched my arm and said, "Can you handle dinner? I'll try to nap before I go in." I said, "Sure." She studied me again. "You've been weird all week." I looked at the court because Emily's team was packing up. "We'll talk tonight." Her fingers pulled back from my sleeve. "About what?" "Tonight," I said. She gave a small laugh, but it did not land. "Okay. Don't do this mystery thing, Brent." I almost apologized. That is how deep the habit went. Even with proof in my bag, even after weeks of watching her lie, part of me still wanted to smooth the moment over so she would not be uncomfortable. At home, I made dinner for Emily, helped her ice her knee, and waited until she went upstairs to shower. Laura came down around 8 in black scrub pants and a fleece jacket, her hair pulled back, badge clipped to her pocket. That badge made my stomach turn. She had built the costume carefully enough to make me feel cruel for questioning it. She grabbed her travel mug from the counter. "I'll text you if it gets crazy." I was sitting at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me, not spread out yet, just there, closed. My laptop was open beside it. "Don't leave yet," I said. Laura stopped near the garage door. "I'm going to be late." "No, you're not." Her face changed before her words did. It was quick, but I saw it. Not fear, exactly. Calculation. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked. I opened the folder and put the first pay statement on the table. Then the next one. Then the schedule screenshots printed with dates circled in blue pen. I did not throw them. I did not slide them dramatically. I just set them down one at a time because my hands needed something controlled to do. She stared at the papers, then at me. "Why were you looking at that?" Open enrollment email came to both of us. "That doesn't give you the right to dig through my work stuff." "It's our insurance, our income, our bank account." She shook her head and looked toward the stairs. "I'm not doing this while Emily's home." "Then don't raise your voice." That made her quiet for a second. She looked back at the papers, and I watched her choose which version of herself to use. Tired nurse, offended wife, responsible mother. She reached for offended wife first. "You've been sitting here building some case against me?" "No, you did that part." Her mouth tightened. "That's not what this is." I turned the laptop slightly so she could see the hospital schedule page. "You told me you worked Thursday. You weren't scheduled. You told me you worked Tuesday. You weren't scheduled. You told me you had overtime. It's not on the pay history." "There are shift adjustments," she said. "Not 6 of them." "You don't understand how hospital staffing works." I nodded because that one almost sounded convincing. It probably had worked on me before. Maybe not. So I asked Rachel Orr what I should understand before I talked to you. The name did more than the paperwork. Laura's eyes narrowed, then widened a little. "Who is Rachel Orr?" "My attorney." She put the travel mug down too hard, and coffee jumped onto the counter. Neither of us moved to wipe it up. "You hired an attorney before talking to me?" she said. "I tried talking to you for weeks. You kept saying extra shifts." Her voice dropped. "Brent, you are making this bigger than it is." I pulled out the bank statement with the Henderson Road charges highlighted. "Then make it small." She looked at the page for maybe 2 seconds. "Sometimes we meet coworkers after. Sometimes people cover things in weird ways. You're connecting things that don't—" "Reeves Orthopedic," I said. She stopped. I hated how much I had needed that reaction. Part of me had still wanted her to laugh, to say she floated to a clinic, to give me anything that let me sleep later. But when I said his name, her face did not ask who. Her face asked how much. I said, "Is Nathan Reeves why you weren't at the hospital?" She looked away from me for the first time. "It's not like that." "What is it like?" She pressed her fingers against her forehead. I was lonely, okay? You were always tired. We were always talking about bills and Emily and your school and my schedule. He listened. I sat there and let that hang between us. Not because it explained anything, but because it showed me what she had been telling herself. She was not denying him anymore. She was trying to make room for him in the story without admitting what she had done to make that room. Did you use Emily's braces as the reason? I asked. Her eyes came back fast. Don't bring Emily into this. You brought her into it every time you said you were working for her. Laura's face folded for a second, and then she got defensive again because shame did not suit her. I didn't take money from her. You took time from her. You took trust from both of us. She crossed her arms. So what now? You're going to punish me? Embarrass me? Tell everyone at the hospital? I filed yesterday. That was the first consequence that landed in the room. Not the affair, not the proof, not Nathan's name. The filing. The fact that I had moved before she could manage what came next. She sat down slowly across from me, still dressed for the shift that did not exist. You filed? Yes. Her voice came out smaller. Brent. I closed the folder because Emily's shower had turned off upstairs, and I did not want our daughter walking into documents and coffee stains and her mother in fake scrubs. You need to stay somewhere else tonight. Connie already said Emily can come over there with me if you make this hard. Laura looked toward the stairs, then back at May. For the first time in months, she did not seem tired. She seemed caught. Laura did not leave easily that night. She packed a bag, unpacked half of it, cried in the hallway, then got angry when crying did not change what I was willing to discuss. She kept saying we needed to talk like adults, which was strange because I had been sitting at the table with documents while she stood there dressed for a shift that did not exist. Emily knew something was wrong, of course. She came downstairs in pajama pants with wet hair and looked from me to Laura to the coffee on the counter. I told her we were having a hard conversation and that she had done nothing wrong. Laura tried to step in and say, "Your dad is upset," but I stopped her before she could make me the weather system in the room. I said, "This is between your mom and me tonight. You're safe." Connie picked Emily and me up 20 minutes later. That part still bothers me, even though it was the right thing to do. I had spent years thinking my job was to keep the house steady, and there I was walking my daughter out with an overnight bag because her mother had turned our kitchen into a place I did not trust. Emily did not ask questions in the car. She just leaned against the window and held the dog's leash, even though we were not bringing the dog. The next few weeks were ugly in quiet ways. Laura did not go stay with Nathan. That fantasy, if she had one, died fast. From what she later said, through angry little comments and one email she should not have sent, Nathan told her he had his own family and his own problems. He called what they had a mistake, which must have felt convenient to him after 6 months of letting my wife use fake shifts to drive across town. Laura tried to control the story anyway. She told her sister I had been monitoring her. She told a friend from work that I had gone through her private employment information, leaving out the part where the payroll and benefits access existed because our insurance and taxes were tied together. She told my mother we had been distant for a long time, which was not completely false, but it was the kind of half-truth people use when they want the listener to fill in the rest kindly. Some people believed her at first. That hurt more than I expected. I wanted the documents to do what documents do on television, where one clean packet flips the whole room. Real life does not work that way. People hesitate. They say, marriage is complicated. They wonder what happened behind closed doors. They do not want to lose the version of someone they had already decided was good. Rachel warned me about that. She told me the paperwork would matter most in the rooms where paperwork counted, not at family dinners or in text threads. so I stopped trying to convince people who wanted a softer version. I saved my energy for mediation, custody scheduling, the house, and making sure Emily's braces stayed paid. Laura fought hardest over the image of being the parent who sacrificed more. She wanted the temporary parenting schedule to bend around her hospital hours, and that was where the fake shifts hurt her. Rachel did not call her names. She did not make a speech. She just laid out the pay history, the posted schedules, the bank charges, and Laura's own written calendar from our fridge. The mediator looked at the dates for a long time, then asked Laura's attorney whether the overnight work schedule was still being represented as accurate. Laura looked down at her hands when that question was asked. That was the moment she lost the thing she had been protecting. Not her job, not all her friends, not even the affair, because Nathan had already backed away from that. She lost control of the story that made her look noble. She could not say she had been breaking herself for our family, when the records showed she had been leaving our family under that excuse. The divorce took months. It was not satisfying every day. I did not get every term I wanted, and Laura did not become some ruined person wandering around with nobody left. We split custody in a way that kept Emily in her school district. I kept the house by refinancing and giving up more of my retirement than I liked. Laura had to take responsibility for part of the marital debt and half of Emily's orthodontic payments, which she complained about, even though those braces had been the excuse she used for half the lies. Emily knows enough now, but not everything. I will never use my daughter as a courtroom, and I will never make her carry adult details just because I had to carry them first. She knows her mom lied about work and that our marriage could not survive it. Some days she is mad at Laura. Some days she is mad at me for being the parent who made the change visible. I let her have both because she is 13, and none of this was supposed to be hers. I still think about those mornings in the kitchen when Laura would come home in scrubs and put her phone face down by the coffee maker. That is the detail that stays with me more than Nathan's name or the restaurant charges. It is how ordinary she made it look. She kissed our daughter, reminded me about trash day, talked about saving money, and let me feel guilty for noticing something was wrong. I do not feel victorious. I feel cleaner. There is a difference. The house is quieter now, and not always in a peaceful way, but I do not have to stand at the sink pretending I believe a sentence just because the person saying it used to be my wife. If this story stayed with you, hit like, share it with someone who understands how quiet betrayal actually works, and subscribe for more stories like this one. I would honestly like to know what you think. Should Brent have confronted Laura earlier, or was waiting the only way to protect himself? Do you think using their daughter's braces as the excuse made the betrayal worse? And if you were Emily later on, how much of the truth would you want to know?